All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Lawyered Up. I'm your host, Jared Moore, and on tonight's program, we're going to be covering a couple of updates, and then we're going to have Mr. Ron Graham, who currently has a case in the Eastern District of Oklahoma's federal court related to the Freedman issue, and that's going to be the meat and potatoes for tonight, and he's going to answer any questions we have. I got a couple of questions. You guys have got a question, pop it into the chat, and we'll ask it. But first, let me go through the updates. The first thing that I need to update you guys on is on October 28th, Travis Scott had a hearing in relation to his misdemeanor charges that are in relation to his impeachment from now it's years ago. Let me bring that up and I'll show you guys what happened. Basically, this hearing was to see if the amounts associated with his misdemeanor charges were enough to warrant them to go on if they were above a nominal amount. The judge ruled that they were, and so we're going to have a trial. One of the interesting things that was brought up at this hearing is Travis's lawyer, Mr. Robert Skikat, mentioned that in his opinion, these charges were politically motivated. So if he's saying that in this hearing, that's probably going to be a pillar of the actual trial, is they're going to have to probably prove that. With that in mind, let's take a look at the ROA for this case, and we can see here, look at these subpoenas. Cherie Willis, that's Travis's ex-wife, has been subpoenaed. Mvskoke Creek Nation Public Gaming has been subpoenaed. Mvskoke Creek Nation National Council has been subpoenaed. The Department of the Treasury has been subpoenaed. The citizenship representatives, Casey Jones, Bobby Green, Attorney General's Robert Frost, Investigator Robert Frost, and some individuals here. So there's a lot of people that are going to be taking the stand in this trial. It's going to be crazy. I will be personally interested to see if Principal Chief Floyd, who was the chief when this case was brought, is going to be called to the stand, because it's going to be crazy, guys. And that's going to happen December 11th, starting at 9:30 a.m. When I'm doing coverage of that, I'm not going to do it as a lawyered up. If I can get into the court, I'm going to give you guys a live update on this case every day. I'll come back and do a live stream, say, here's what happened. It won't be part of lawyered up. It'll just be about that case. Okay. The reason I mentioned if I get into court is because Mr. Joseph Hicks had a court date on November the 6th, and I wasn't able to go to court, but our managing editor, Braden Harper, was able to go to court, but he was told by the court clerk that the judge is not going to allow any media into that courtroom for that case. So we weren't able to get into the courtroom. If you guys remember back in the other Freedman case, the Kennedy and Grayson Freedman case that went to the Mvskoke Creek Nation Supreme Court, Mvskoke media was told by the Supreme Court that they weren't going to give us any documents. And so we went to the AG's office, and the AG was able to furnish us with that stay, if you guys remember that coverage. Okay, so that's what we did in this situation is I emailed the AG's office and I said, hey, we weren't allowed in court for this hearing. What happened? And we got a response. So let's take a look at that. This is from Matthew J. Hall. He's the prosecutor in the AG's office that's handling Mr. Hicks' case. And this is what he said. As for an update, his attorney asked me what I was wanting to do, and I said simply accelerate him to a conviction. He has gotten too many passes. I was not asking for jail time, as Mr. Hicks had completed some rehab, even if only 30 days programmed before coming to court. His attorney agreed. When the court called the case, I stated the nation was seeking to accelerate the defendant to a conviction based off his plea in the later, earlier court plea case, but would not be seeking jail time. Also, to reinstate any previously imposed fines, costs, etc., defense counsel stated his client understood and confessed the nation's application and accepted the nation's recommendation. The court pronounced judgment and accelerated Mr. Hicks' case to a 1-year suspended sentence and reimposed any previously assessed fines and costs. So now he has a misdemeanor conviction for DUI. That's what the prosecutor in the case said. That's not what I'm saying, guys. So just so you know. I sent a follow-up email on that asking if there was going to be anything refiled as a felony on his second DUI, and I haven't received a response there. Just an update on that case too. Mr. Hicks did not win re-election, so he will be replaced by Dodie Barnett in January. Okay, so with all that being said, let's take a look at, well, first off, let me introduce Mr. Ron Graham. Mr. Graham, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
I'm happy to be here. I'm delighted you invited me. Thank you.
Awesome. So, and Mr. Graham has a case right now. I'm going to switch over to the filing real quick. It is Ron Graham versus Deborah Haaland, Secretary of the United States Department of the Interior, Eddie Streeter, Regional Director, Eastern Oklahoma Region, Bureau of Indian Affairs, United States Department of the Interior, Mvskoke Creek Nation Citizenship Board, and David Hill, Principal Chief of the Mvskoke Creek Nation in his official capacity. The status of this case right now, and Mr. Graham, if I say anything that's inaccurate, please update me because I'm going off of what's on the PACER. The status right now is you guys have filed a motion to wait until the Creek Nation Supreme Court makes a decision in the Grayson and Kennedy cases. Is that fair to say where your federal case is?
Well, I'll agree with that, but with one exception, I believe Chief Hill is not on the lawsuit anymore. I'm not sure, but I believe he's not on there anymore.
I saw that there was a motion for him to be removed from the case, but I didn't see that the judge had posted an order for that motion yet. So maybe the judge has, and they haven't updated the online system. So Chief Hill may not be on the lawsuit anymore, guys. Okay, so before we dive into the actual complaint, I know we had spoke previously, Mr. Graham, about some of the claims that were made by candidates and their meet the candidates and stuff, and I think it was in relation to treaties versus constitutions, and I wanted to give you an opportunity because I know we had talked and you wanted to see if you could get some time to address those claims, and I wanted to give you a few minutes to just talk about that if you wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. As you should know, the treaty is the supreme law of the land. Both of them are great laws. The Mvskoke Creek Nation Constitution that's give us our sovereignty as long as the treaty. But the treaty is the supreme law of the land, period. And as you know, by now, we've all heard of the Mvskoke case. The Mvskoke case was based on the treaty. It was not based on the Constitution. Okay, and so that's what I want folks to actually compare. The treaty and the Constitution, both of them are good law, but the treaty is the supreme law of the land. Even the chief knows that because he sent a letter to our governor, Governor Stent, stating that the treaty is the supreme law of the land, as stated in Article 6, I believe, of the United States Constitution. So the treaty is supreme law.
Yeah, and I would add on to that a little bit too for you guys. If you go back and look at on our YouTube channel, we posted the story about the district court's ruling in the Grayson and Kennedy case, right? We posted a link in the description of that video to the judge's written opinion. And if you go and read the judge's written opinion, she has a whole, I think it's like a couple of pages where she talks about how even the Creek Nation Constitution explicitly states in its wording that it derives its authority from the 1866 treaty. So that's that's one of the things too that will be decided as we go up the food chain. But the legal principle we're kind of discussing is that constitutions and governments, they get a part of where they kind of get their sovereignty from is the treaties that they sign. Okay. So with that being said, let's look at this. We've had some questions pop up. And I want to holler at TY Pro. If I don't get to something that you put into the chat, just bear with me because I got a couple of questions I want to ask too, but one of these I can't ask. TY Pro asked, does Mr. Graham reside within the reservation boundaries?
Absolutely.
All right.
I was born and raised right here in Okmulgee.
All right.
And right now, I'm in the reservation right now. I stay 5 minutes away from the Mvskoke Creek Nation.
All right. And also, I want to mention to you guys too. I'm gonna click right over here to the filing, because there is. If you guys want more information about who Mr. Graham is in prior cases and stuff, there's a link to some coverage in the description of this video. You can click it and watch that video. It'll get you caught up. Also, in the complaint, I'm not going to really go through. There is a large section about the history of this issue that's very good and it's very well researched, and you guys should go ahead and read it. It is from this is what Mr. Graham's lawyers have filed in the case, but I think it's all very accurate and good. So, and it's got a lot of interesting information in there. The first thing I wanted to speak with you about, Mr. Graham, was some questions that I had. So my first question is, on page 10, let me pop this up for the audience. On page 10 of your complaint, it's in number 49, it says, Freedman and Freedman descendants were not permitted to participate in the process to ratify the 1979 MCN Constitution. And then it continues on, violating Section 503 of the OIWA, the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, 25 U.S.C. Section 5203, in effect 1979, as well as the Treaty of 1866. So one of the things that we do on this show is, if we see code, we go and we pull code. So I went and pulled this code here. Let's take a look at it. This is the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, Title 25, 5203. And I'm just going to read through it really quickly, guys, so we have an idea, so we know what it says. It says, any reorganized tribe or band of Indians residing in Oklahoma shall have the right to organize for its common welfare and to adopt a constitution and bylaws under such rules and regulations as the Secretary of the Interior may prescribe. The Secretary of the Interior may issue to any such organized group a charter of incorporation, which shall become operative when ratified by a majority vote of the adult members of the organization voting, provided, however, that such election shall be void unless the total vote cast to be at least 30% of those entitled to vote. Such charter may convey to the incorporated group, in addition to any powers which may be properly vested in a body corporate under the laws of the state of Oklahoma, the right to participate in the revolving credit fund, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, my question to you, Mr. Graham, is, and I know, you're not the lawyer trying this case, so if you don't know, or if this part is a part of the strategy, just let, if you can't answer, you can't answer. But my question here is, what it looks like it's saying is that the 79 Constitution is void because there was they violated section 503, and the only thing that I could find in this language here that says that something could be void is this 30%. Is that the strategy there? Is that what's being referenced in your filing?
Again, Mr. Moore, I'm not an attorney. You answered it yourself. I don't know all those numbers. I know a little bit about roll numbers. I've been doing genealogy for over 40 years now, but I'm not an attorney. But it's one thing I will say to that question or statement is that we're sovereignty. When I say we, the Mvskoke Creek Nation or any tribe is sovereign. Okay, but the thing is, that sovereign nation can have any law that is contrary to federal law. It's illegal. You cannot do that. Even when the guy Sidney Mills approved that 79 Constitution, in his one of his obligations in his before he even signed it is that the law cannot be contrary to federal law. And that's what the Constitution of the Mvskoke Creek Nation is. It is contrary to federal law. What federal law? The treaty. The treaty is federal law. So with that other stuff, that the other things you were talking about. Excuse me. I'm not sure. I'm not
Okay,
sure about.
okay. Well, that was my question because it looks like what the filing's saying is that 30% threshold wasn't met. But if we can't get a confirmation there, because I don't know how much of the strategy you're being included on, with the filing, because I know it's like the lawyers write all that stuff. But we've had some questions pop up, and I do want to come back to this issue though, or actually we can touch on one of these questions right now. One of the suggestions that we've gotten a lot in the chat when we are discussing the Freedman issue is that the suggestion that the Freedman groups could try to organize under this Indian Welfare Act provision to make their own tribal band or their own tribal town and maybe get federal recognition that's independent from the Mvskoke Creek Nation, similar to how Tlaloc or the other tribal towns did it. Has there been any discussions of that, or like, what's your opinion of that?
Well, this is a fact that was tried years ago, but Miss Grayson is now the head of that organization, the Mvskoke Creek Indian Freedman Band. So that was tried and done before, but we did not succeed with that.
Do you know what happened there, or is there any history you can give us on that?
Well, I would rather for Miss Grayson to address that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
I do know the history of it, but she's the leader of that organization now, and I have much love and respect for what she's doing and they are doing, and I'm included with that organization. But we've tried. I'm very familiar with the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, so it was something we tried to do. But going back, when I say we, I mean the Creek Freedman people. The Creek people are African descent, are listed on the Creek Freedman roll. We are Creek, just like we are. I'm an American also, although I'm an African American. The Americans, did they want me then? Do they want me? I mean, what I'm trying to say is, I'm Creek. We are Creek. Period. I was born and raised Creek. My dad was original Alati. He was traditional, spoke the language, his first language. But so no, Mr. Moore, I'm Creek, just as I'm an American. And the same way I became an American through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, I became a Creek citizen. My ancestors became a Creek citizen off of Article 2 of the Treaty of 1866. So that's how things are. I'm very versed in a lot of these laws, even Title VII. Very few people there have heard of Title VII. I know Title VII front and back, every inch of it. So no, we've addressed some issues like that. We have.
Okay. There's been some comments popped up in the chat, and I just want to do a clarification real quick for those guys. So, guys, if you look at the section that we were talking about, the 30%, what the section there is saying is that the election will be void unless the total vote cast is at least 30%, right? And part of the reason I was bringing this up is because what we would be looking at is a theoretical argument that says that so the Creek Freedmen were excluded from the vote, right? So that vote is void because there were less than 30% of the people who could vote that voted, right? So what that's saying is that you got to have at least 30% of the people who could vote in that constitutional ratification, or it doesn't work, right? And so in order for that to be true for the Creek Freedmen, then that number would have to be over 70%, if that makes sense to you guys. You see what I'm saying? Because if you're saying that the tribe excluded the freedmen and that changed those numbers enough, the 100% if you took the 100% of all the people that could vote, the freedmen would have to be over 70%. Does that make sense? Because you could still have a constitution voted on by just 30% of the people who could vote if you excluded 70% of the people who could vote, right? So that's what the department is saying there. That's why I was curious as to whether Mr. Graham was included in that part of it when that was written and how that discussion was. The other question I had about that, Mr. Graham, on the filing. And I understand, you're not the lawyer here, but I am curious as to whether you're included in this because, let's see, I'm going to scroll down here to page 22. And if you guys check the description of this video, you can see that we have the link to this filing, so you guys can check it out. It has some good history in it. So some of the remedies that you guys, or the relief that you guys are asking for, right, and is two things that are on this list. And this is what I was going to ask you about is you're asking the court to declare the Creek Freedmen as citizens of Mvskoke Creek Nation, right?
Yes.
And the other thing is listed on here is that the court declare the MCN 1979 Constitution void, right?
I believe it's on there, yes.
Okay. And then also several times in the filing mentions that, rightfully so, that if the Constitution is established illegally, the government is illegal, and the federal government can't work with an illegal government, right? And that's kind of like part of the cases about COVID monies and how the federal government shouldn't be distributing these monies because the Creek Nation government was formed by this Constitution. Would that be a safe way to summarize that?
Again, Mr. Moore, I don't get into that. I had no real input on doing this. I'm a genealogist and a historian.
Well,
so
from the perspective of the person who's that's filing the complaint, what you'd like to see is those two things, right? You'd like to see that the court, let's say the court, you won your case and it went up to the Supreme Court or the 25th Circuit District, and you win there. My question is, if the Constitution's void, right, that is going to basically effectively make the tribal government not exist anymore. All of our gaming license would be void, because to have a gaming license, you would have to have functioning tribal courts and functioning tribal governments. That's part of the prerequisites. So there wouldn't be any gaming licenses anymore. Or like how could the federal court system make you a citizen of the tribe when there isn't a constitution? Like what would the sequence of events be after you won, I guess is my question from your perspective.
This is my opinion in my perspective. Okay. This can actually be fixed within 30 days. All it takes is the National Council. Hear me out. Hear me clearly. All it takes is the National Council to have one sponsor, go to the floor and says, okay, let's repeal these bills, such as the bills that are in the Title VII, where it states by blood, or in the Constitution. Repeal that. The National Council has the right to do that. All it takes is one sponsor. Well, I'll take two.
If they were going to amend the Constitution, though, they would have to have a citizen vote on that. Just as a clarification there.
Let me clarify you on that. I disagree with you on that. Okay, Mr. Moore? Because the citizens didn't vote on the by blood. They did not. And if one person, and I've asked this for many years, one person showed me what the 1979 vote was all about. And show me where it says that the by blood was inserted into the Constitution. It was not. We got to be clear on this. I have the documents, and the documents are out there. So I challenge every citizen out there to go to your National Council representative and ask for the Ask to see what was on the ballot of that 1979 Constitution, and see, let them show you what it is. Go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, do a FOIA request to see what that ballot has on there, to see what exactly was voted on. Number two, when did the when was it inserted into the Constitution? Okay, it's this time to be fully educated on what's going on. I've been doing this for, I say this all the time, but I've been doing this 40 years. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of help. I've prayed many days of what's going on, what happened to me, and not only me, the other Freedman folks that were citizens of the Creek Nation. So I challenge you all. You got fact-finding people out there. You got folks who know how to do things, but people are not saying nothing. They're not saying anything. They're keeping quiet. This is not the time to stay quiet. This is the time to educate each other. Let's educate. Okay, that's my main goal, is to educate folks. That's what I'm. But no, let's see what happened. Let's actually see what was voted on. Okay, I challenge you all to do that.
Okay, well, and my question to you too on that front is, so these are the claims in your complaint, right? Is those similar stuff? Like, what are you guys going to present in court to prove those things? Like, that's kind of my.
I'm not sure. I'm not. You know, Mr. Simmons called me and he said, I'm a genealogist. That's what I do. And if he may need some genealogy advice or point to go this way or go that way, that's what I do. I'm a genealogist and a historian.
Well, I mean, Mr. Simmons has seen your research, though, and you're saying you have copies of the ballot or the original Constitution before it had by blood inserted in there. He's been shown those things, right?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. So as far as like the strategy of the complaint and all of the legal side, you're being like they're doing their thing and you're doing your thing, and it's two separate things. Would that
absolutely
be? Okay,
absolutely.
Right. So really, I'm gonna not focus on the complaint so much anymore, because it sounds like they're not looping you in on what they're going to do, and that's pretty standard. You know, guys, lawyers do what they do, and they don't always tell the client, and the client isn't always privy to any of the strategy that the lawyer's going to use from a legal standpoint. T.Y. Prohl saying, is Demario Solomon Simmons the attorney? Yes, and he was. That was just recently changed. Is that right, Mr. Graham? Mr. Solomon Simmons was just brought in on the case, or has he always been on the case? Because I know there was an attorney that had filed on the list of stuff to be removed from the case.
No, he's always been a case, but I did use another attorney at one time, but he's always been on the case.
He's always been the lead attorney.
Yes.
Okay. So and in the future too, if you talk to Mr. Solomon Simmons, the door's open for him to come on the program too if he wants to come on. I know it's kind of hard for a lawyer to come in and talk about a case he's actually doing in court while he's doing it. So, but I'm going to go through the chat really quick. And guys, as we've established here with Mr. Graham, let's try to talk a little bit about the history and stuff and move away from the complaint, because he isn't involved in the construction of that and everything. So let me go and look over here and see what type of questions we have. Constitution. Is there anything about this case right now at the stage that it's at, Mr. Graham, that you feel we need to mention that we haven't mentioned yet? Well, I'm trying to see if there's any other questions.
Well, no, not exactly. Right now, Mr. Moore, my goal is to educate folks.
Oh, we've got a question here. Blue is asking, and this is you're absolutely right. Was there a constitution established with the 1866 treaty, there was a constitution that was created after the 1866 treaty that does have different requirements. And I don't know if Mr. Graham, if you could speak on that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And yes, it was a constitution, the 1867 Constitution.
Yes.
And in that 1867 Constitution, it states in that Mvskoke Creek Nation Constitution that the treaty is the supreme law of the land. Please, if you can, get a copy of that first Constitution. You will see exactly what happened. You had I'm going to give you a synopsis on the timeline. 1866, you had the treaty. Well, I'm going to go before that. In 1787, you had the U.S. Constitution where it stated the treaty shall be the supreme law of the land. 1866, you had the Mvskoke Creek Nation Treaty that came out. And then in 1867, you had the Mvskoke Creek Nation Constitution. Okay, and so there were always things leading up to that 1898, the Dawes Commission. There was a lot of laws leading up to it, but in that treaty, in the U.S. Constitution, even in the Mvskoke Creek Nation 1867 Constitution, it all stated that the treaties would be the supreme law of the land. When was that taken out? That was taken out in the 1979 Constitution. It was taken out, and then it was replaced with the by blood. Read you all. We've got to read if you really want to fully understand what's going on. Read that Constitution. Read your treaty. Read that 1867. I've studied these things. Okay, like I stated a moment ago. So yeah, the Constitution, read those constitutions. That's all you have to do.
Okay. And I do want to point something out, because that's kind of like what I was bringing up earlier about because we're talking about previous constitutions, and in that filing it mentions that Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act regulations for those new things. So basically, when the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act got passed, it opened a door for tribes to do new constitutions and new charters and all those things, and several tribes did. Tribal towns got recognized, and they became separate, federally recognized tribes. And so this is just my perspective from reading the filing and reading that specific regulation, is, to me, that creates a narrative where the federal government, the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act got passed, and there was some fine print in there that said all you got to do is have 30% of your population of voters vote on something. Yes. And so they got those guys together, and they were like, and we don't have to get these other guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so and that's because my question on this whole process is, if the freedmen weren't allowed to vote on the 1979 Constitution, how did that Constitution get through the BIA, right? Because they're supposed to be reviewing this stuff. And if you only have to have 30% of your population vote on something to get it past the BIA, getting 30% of anything, that's not even an election, right? Like, you can't get elected with 30% of your voters. You'll lose. Somebody else gets 50, you lose, right? So that's my and there was also, when I was doing research on this, there were some changes that were going to be issued after this in 1967, where they were going to reduce that even further to say, we're not going to take 30% of the people who could vote. We're going to take 30% of the people who are registered to vote, which is even a smaller number, right? So the possible voters is a lot larger than the actual registered voters. Anyway, and it's something interesting to look at, you guys too in the audience. I just want to point this out. If you go and you look at the complaint and you pull up this, let me go to the page 10. It's on page 10 where it quotes this regulation here, the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act 25 USC 5203. If you put that into Google, right, and you just Google it, it'll bring up all of these things from the BIA's website where they have past press releases related to this issue all the way back to 1967 that they've put online. So you can go in there and you can read all of these proposed changes and stuff. So to me, it's like that part is becoming clear how it got through the BIA outside of that. And I'm just curious, what's your opinion on that, Mr. Graham? Like, because that for me was always, I don't understand how that happened. Right.
Oh, okay. When you read that Sidney Mills approved this on that last paper, where it has the tally on that last paper, because I've studied this. On there, it has that you can this. It says this Constitution will be approved, considered. He had an obligation on there that none of these things are contrary to federal law. That's what it says. Now, you just stated a moment ago you've seen these things. So I think I'm right about that, what you just stated. But when you read that, why is that clause in there that it could not be contrary to federal law? There's a reason that's in there. So that's my only assumption about that. Okay. I don't know why that clause is in there.
Well, what I was asking, right? What I'm asking is, if we have the Constitution, and part of the central argument here is that the Constitution's void. The 1979 Constitution is void.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
How did that Constitution get past the guy at the BIA, right? Like how was the BIA able to do it? Because they've got regulations under the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act about how they're supposed to review these things, and they can't just say, yes, it's good, even if they want to. They have to fulfill certain requirements, right? So how did it get through that process? That's my question.
I don't know, but I'm gonna have an opinion, and I do have an opinion.
Well, go for it.
It shouldn't have. It's that plain and simple. It shouldn't have. They shouldn't have never passed it. It shouldn't have never been passed, because what was at hand was that Sidney Mills actually studied this Constitution as given. Did he? What happened? Why did he do that? That's my question also.
Okay.
Why was that passed?
Yes, and because I think that that doesn't have anything to do with the tribe. That's the federal government is doing something that's not kosher, right?
I agree with that. I agree with that statement.
All right. So we've had a question that's recurring in the chat, and I'm going to try to ask it because we've kind of touched on it already, that you're here, you're speaking for Ron Graham, you're not speaking for all the Freedman groups or the Freedman band or any other groups. And so I don't want to ask you about stuff, because one of the questions we keep getting is why the Freedmen don't sue the federal government for Freedman CDIB recognition. So in your opinion, for yourself or any of these other groups, has that ever been an option? And as filing a tandem lawsuit for the federal government to independently recognize Creek Freedmen, or because I know we talked about it earlier and you didn't want to speak on why that previous movement didn't happen, but have there been secondary attempts, or what did the federal government say in that situation, or why isn't that avenue being attacked?
No, there was no secondary attempt. And again, I'm gonna go back to Miss Grayson. That's their organization. Well, and I say our organization, but
well, let's not talk about their organization or Miss Grayson. In your opinion, you personally, is that something that you would file? Like, you could go file it, right?
No, I'm first and foremost, I was harmed. Me personally now. I was harmed when I submitted my citizenship application to the Mvskoke Creek Nation. Not to the federal government, to the Mvskoke Creek Nation. So if they're the one that done the harm, they're the ones that are specifically to be sued, because
Okay.
I know I was born a Mvskoke Creek Nation citizen.
Hmm.
Not until 1979, when I was disenfranchised, I was not a part of I did not have my citizenship. Uh, it was removed. So no, that's whatever the attorneys would like to do. It's up to them.
I see. I
Uh,
see.
but no, I have not considered it personally to go sue the federal government. I have not done that.
Well,
My main my main goal is to become a citizen.
just to clarify on that statement right there, just that part of your this lawsuit is against the federal government. It's against Department of Interior, etc. on this issue. I'm just clearing that up.
Okay, yeah, that I'm talking about when I first came in.
Hmm.
It was the citizenship.
Right.
It was for
Right.
citizenship. That's when I
Yeah.
first came in. That's what
So
I'm talking about
so I
now.
guess to answer all the chat's questions, you haven't challenged the federal government, or you personally haven't attempted to get independent federal recognition for the Creek Freedman or anything like that. That it's been another group, and you weren't involved in the what happened there.
Oh, I was involved in that. Okay, I was involved in that, but things didn't work out like we wanted to. Um, I really didn't. You know what? I'm Creek. I'm Mvskoke Creek. I was born that. Just as I was born an American. Okay, you all don't understand. Okay, if America would do me the same way the Mvskoke Creek Nation is doing me, or us, I would be fighting the government. Okay, is that plain and simple? But the Creek Nation is doing this to me, my family, my ancestors, the freedmen. Period. So no, this is against the Creek Nation. Okay, and
Well,
again,
Well, I just want to clarify
okay,
again because the lawsuit is actually against the federal government as a principal. The Creek Nation is on there, but also the Department of Interior, etc. And part of the claims in the complaint are that the federal government is dealing with an illegal government, etc., in relation to the free. So I know you're saying that this is just about the Creek Nation, but on there you are suing Deborah Haaland as Department of Interior, etc. So
that's what my attorney had advised me. That's what he wants to do. It's
hmm.
all his decision. It's everything is his decision, and
Okay.
I agree. I'm 110% behind it.
Okay. All
So
right. All right.
that's how I feel.
Well, I don't see any other questions popping up here. Um, Let me look through here real quick.
What I would like to say, Mr. Moore,
Sure,
is,
go for it.
because folks have been coming at me hard. I mean, real, and I could take it. It's no problem for me, uh, because I know what I'm doing is right, and what I'm doing is trying to correct these unjust laws, because they are unjust.
Hmm.
Uh, we've got to make these laws just and equal for everyone. Everyone here, as an American, all of these laws are equal to every American. Okay,
Hmm.
every American. Nobody, anybody can be whatever they want to be as an American. Okay, and that's how I feel about the Creek Nation. Let's make these laws equal to everyone. Period.
Okay. There has been a question pop up here. They're asking if you have personally ever applied for a CDIB card.
Yes.
Okay. And what happened with that?
Uh, my dad, them, they're all on the list. They're listed as freedmen. They're listed as freedmen, but there were other documents that you can go back to that they had a blood quantum. Okay, so and I don't want to say too much about that, but they are listed on the blood roll, they did have a blood quantum. Okay, so. But I have applied for a CDIB card. I just didn't applied for a CDIB card for my children. So, but I'm getting ready to see how that goes also.
Okay. Well, I was just curious as to what the rationale the federal government was giving you, because, we could talk about the Creek Nation and what is in the Constitution there. There's much more case law for the federal government is in relation to CDIB and those things, and that application to say, hey, like what their reasoning was for denying your CDIB card application. And if you can't talk about it for legal reasons or whatever, that's fine. I understand, but it would help the members in the chat or people in the audience to understand your position more if you could kind of explain like what you were told by the federal government.
I'm gonna give you one personal example. Joe Hutton is on the Freedman roll, okay? But Joe Hutton is testifying. When he was testifying to receive his citizenship, then he testified again to receive his land. And receiving his citizenship, it was asked. Joe Hutton states that my dad was a half-breed, half Indian, half colored. Now, is saying one half, is that a blood quantum? Yes, it is. In my opinion, it is. If he's one half, it said his dad, is one half Indian and one half colored. That's one way. But even so, he was placed on that Freedman roll. Okay. And then there's other documents that my dad was on that had a blood quantum on there. We've got to do the research. I've done my research, and I've done a research. I've looked at every card that's in the Dawes roll. In the Creek Nation, the by blood roll and the Freedman roll. I've looked at every card, thousands of them, and I see the tactic and the procedures, the policies that the Dawes Commission did. Okay, I know how it's done. All right, so no, I get that question all the time. Are you blood? Are you by blood? By blood. Of course it's by blood. It's by blood, but we list on Freedman Road. But the main thing in the supreme law, again, is the treaty. It's the treaty, period. So that's what we ought to be looking at. That right there.
Okay. All right. And I agree with you there on that front, too. Treaties are the law of the land. I'm firmly in that camp myself. Let me check the chat here and see if we have anything here. And just to clarify, you applied for CDIB and it was denied. Is that the Cliff Notes version?
Yes. It was denied. It's denied.
All right. Let's see here, because somebody was asking just that. Let's see. Goes back. I'm not seeing any other questions we haven't touched on here. So, with your current case that's in the Eastern District of Oklahoma, win or lose, I mean, if you guys win, I'm going to assume that either the federal government or the Creek Nation is going to go up to the next court. Is that something that you guys are looking at doing too? Is like, if you lose at this Eastern District, are you going to keep going up the food chain? Are you guys going all the way to the Supreme Court with your case?
Whatever my attorney wants to be, whatever he wants to do, whatever he advised me to do, whatever it is. Like I say, I'm 110% behind him. So
okay, great. And let's see, what was my other question? I think that's it. I do want to encourage you guys that are watching this to read the complaint. There's a lot of really good history in there. I'm going to take your suggestion and file a Freedom of Information Act on to see if I can get what was put on the ballot for the first constitutional election, because I don't, my thing with that is, I don't know, did the BIA get a copy of what went out to those citizens, right, that they actually voted of, or did they get what was submitted to them after the vote had happened? Because both of those things could be problematic, right? If they're getting submitted whatever and told, if the BIA is getting a copy of something and being told this is what passed, right? Or just like what you were saying, if the by blood language was inserted after the vote or through some other process there, then that's definitely not the way things are supposed to go. Constitutional amendments are supposed to be voted on by citizens, right? It's not, the legislature can't just arbitrarily do it, even if they have the chief sign something. But I myself haven't seen some, like a verified copy of something that shows what that ballot looked like, right? So, but filing a Freedom of Information Act, we could definitely try to get that done. And I want to let you guys know that we're almost at an hour, and my time in this meeting is going to run out. So if it shuts down early, it's not me doing that, Mr. Graham. It's the Google Meets time up that's doing that. And I am not going to be in the studio next week. I'm going on vacation for Thanksgiving, so there's not going to be much coming out of here next week. I might post a Christmas video. And then we'll be back the week of the 27th through December the 1st. I'm scheduling some stuff there, so you guys might want to tune in. Gary's show will be back that week as well. And Mr. Graham, is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap and get out of here?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you for letting me be on the show and everything.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on, sir.
Yes. But you all... Let's read. Let's study. Let's see what happened. Let's see what actually happened. Go to your National Council representative there at the Creek Nation and see what's going on. We've got to educate ourselves. You know, the Bible tells me that the lack of knowledge destroys a nation.
Yes.
Okay? So let's build this nation up with knowledge, with education. Let's do this for each other, okay? So let's do that. I encourage you all to study, to read, see what's going on, okay?
Absolutely, I agree with all of those sentiments. And if I can get copies of any of that stuff, you know, we're going to publish it, and you guys can check it out. And we're just going to go from there. And thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. And I'll see you next time. Mado, Hadum, Chihichathles.
Hadum.